Hi, you're listening to the Content Sales Podcast, the show all about how to create content to attract, convert, and keep your ideal clients. Welcome to episode 236. I'm Suzi Dafnis, and here with me is my co-host, Michelle Falzon. Hey, Michelle, how are you?
Hey, Suzi, I'm very well, thank you. And it is so good to be here discussing a topic that is near and dear to my heart and something I know that we both have a lot of expertise with. But, we haven't really done much of a deep dive into this topic very much on the show.
No, and that's why we're doing it right now. And the topic, if you haven't already figured out, is quizzes. Now, this is a really powerful type of content marketing that you can use at various points in your marketing funnel, whether that's at the very top of your funnel, when you're acquiring new leads, or in the middle of your funnel, when you want to help people get more informed so that they're ready to buy from you. So, for example, you might offer a quiz that helps people figure out which of your podcast episodes are the best ones for them to listen to based on what they need right now, or which of your blog posts or which free training of yours is ideal for them as a next step. You can even offer a quiz at the bottom of your funnel where you might offer people a diagnostic or an assessment to figure out exactly which of your products and services is the right one for them to purchase. And even after someone buys from you, and this is something we do, to help them use what's available to them. So, for example, you might offer a quiz to new members in your membership that diagnoses what they need to learn first and then prescribes which of the items in your training libraries are best to dive into right away. So many applications.
Yeah, there are lots and lots of uses for a quiz or an assessment, and we wanted to kind of narrow it down for today's show. We might dig into this some more as we go along, but the type of quiz or assessment we're really talking about today is mostly the type that helps you to either get a new lead or turn that lead into a new customer. So either as, a lead magnet right at the very front of your funnel that you might be advertising on social to say, hey, come take my quiz. Or once somebody's kind of in your world, you can email market to them or retarget them or reach out to them in some other way to say, hey, take my quiz, so that they haven't yet turned into a customer. They've opted in for something in the past and you're looking for a way to kind of get them activated, get them moving through a process where they turn into a customer. And as our friend, our colleague, and the all-round world-class quiz expert, Ryan Levesque, says, these are really what he calls marketing quizzes. They're not deep dive scientific diagnostics like some of the diagnostics that you might pay a lot of money for. So in those cases where you're paying a lot, it's a scientific diagnostic, the quiz or the assessment is the actual product being sold. Like, for example, a Myers-Briggs or a Strengths Finder assessment. And we're not talking about that. You don't have to go to great lengths to create a scientifically robust 50-question, deep kind of scientific assessment. And while we're talking about what these quizzes are not, the ones that we're not covering today, they're also not those gimmicky novelty quizzes you sometimes might see online, such as, what type of Disney princess are you, right? We're not going to the other end of the spectrum either. Instead, the quizzes we're talking about today are specifically designed to move someone closer to buying a very specific offer from you.
And they sure are. And as you said, they are marketing quizzes. And when done well, they can be so effective. And in today's episode, we'll give you some of our top tips for thinking about and creating your marketing quiz. We'll also give you a few tools that you can use to create your quiz. And one of the first things you want to do if you're thinking about creating a quiz is to get crystal clear on the purpose of your quiz. As always, we're being very strategic in the content that we're providing here in this episode. But the thing with quizzes is they can induce a lot of curiosity and interest. They can be great as a first touch point with a prospective new customer, and you'll see why. So, for instance, say someone sees the quiz advertised on Facebook or in an email or a YouTube video, they click to take the quiz, and then typically you would ask for the name and email before delivering the quiz results.
Yeah, and the beauty of this process is that not only can you very often get more people opting in for a quiz than other types of lead magnets, it's a very effective way to get somebody onto your email list. You also learn a lot more about each of those people that are opting in because you know how they've answered each of your quiz questions. That means you can better segment those leads and provide more personalized follow-up based on what they've told you. This is really powerful. It also means that those people have had a deeper level of engagement with you at their first or one of their earliest points of contact. For example, let's say you've put a lead magnet out there like a free PDF, and we love free PDFs, nothing against them. But it might take someone 15 to 20 seconds to see that ad, interact with the ad, click on it, go to your landing page and enter their email address. So you've occupied a very small amount of their mind share, and then they're onto their busy day, and then they might even forget that they've opted in for that. And later when you're emailing them, they think, who is this person emailing me, right? Contrast that with a quiz where somebody is likely to interact with your quiz for a couple of minutes, and they're also more likely to dig into the quiz results in a deeper way because they're really curious and interested in what type of result did I get? What type of lead generation strategy is right for me, or whatever it is. So you're generally, excuse me, frog in my throat. So you're generally occupying more of their attention and their interest right out of the gate.
And what that means is that your follow-up can often be very effective. It also means that you can see a high number of people moving forward to the next step that you want them to take right there and then at the end of your quiz, and this is very important. And those next steps can be varied. It could be that you want them to go straight to your e-commerce store and buy the product that you recommended. It could be that you invite them to a free webinar or training, and on that webinar, you're going to make an offer for your product or service. It might be that you want to send them to a sales page where you provide a long form sales letter persuading someone to buy your product or service. It could be that you're offering a free trial of your software or your membership, or it can even be that you invite them to join your wait list for when your special offer next becomes available. So you're really only limited by your imagination in terms of the next steps that you can offer right there when someone completes the quiz. The important point is that your quiz has the person taking the quiz really wanting and feeling like they need that next step. So, for example, we had a quiz for her business, which was, what is your networking personality? And when someone took that quiz, they were given their results. They were organized into one of 3 types of networking personalities that we see here in the Her Business Network. And for each of those types of networking personalities, there were strengths and blind spots and opportunities. And so we were able to speak to each personality type individually about what type of networking suits them best, which then opened the door nicely for us having a conversation with them about joining the Her Business Network.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more about that being the most important first step when thinking about creating a quiz, and that is getting clear on the specific outcome of the quiz. And ultimately, that outcome is, what are you selling? Or what is the ultimate desired activity somebody is doing at the end of your quiz that you're getting them to do right away as soon as they've achieved the details, which networking personality are you? Once they've got their results, what's that very clear next step? Then the second step in creating your quiz, once you're clear on what that outcome is getting really clear about who you are speaking to. Now, this is no surprise, right? What are you selling and who are you speaking to? Who do you want to take your quiz? So, for example, if you had a quiz where your desired outcome was that people signed up for your beginner's crochet course at the end of your quiz, or in the example Suzi just gave us, where she can put people into a conversation to consider joining the Her Business Network. But let's say you've got this beginner's crochet course and that's what you want them to take up at the end of your quiz. Then you obviously want crochet beginners to be attracted to your quiz. Now, it sounds kind of obvious, but I often see quiz ideas that are just attracting the wrong people from the start. That makes it really hard for the thing you're offering at the end to feel like the natural next step. Another example, let's say you wanted to provide your leadership consulting at the end of your quiz, or at least to invite somebody onto a call to talk to you about what their next steps might be with leadership. And your ideal client is, say, an HR manager in the banking or the finance industries, then you really need to be clear about what they might be interested in and make sure that the quiz is helping them learn a bit more about that.
And if you're at the point in your business where you're not sure about who your ideal client is, our recommendation is that you do that work before you go to the time and expense of creating a quiz. And we have several resources in our earlier episodes about your ideal client. And we also have some episodes about finding your niche. And we'll put links to those episodes in today's show notes. I'll give you the details of where you'll find the show notes a little later, but that's going to allow you to do that pre-work first. Once you know what you plan to offer at the end of your quiz, who your quiz is for, then the next step, which is step 3 in this process, is to think about what the topic of your quiz might be. Now, this can be really fun. Now, remember what Michelle said about the topic needing to not only be relevant to something that your ideal customer is going to feel curious about, but also a topic that will be relevant to the next step that you want people to take. So when thinking about your quiz topic, here are a few really quick tips. The first is, what is the topic that people are always asking you about? For example, let's say you're a beautician. Maybe people are always asking you about how to know the right skin routine for their skin type. That would be an excellent topic for a quiz. Another tip to help you think about the topic of your quiz is to look at a big mistake that people either make or they're afraid they will make when it comes to the solution, the product or service that you provide. So let's say you're a financial planner and you help people plan their retirement. Perhaps many of your ideal clients are worried about choosing the wrong investing strategy. So a quiz about the right investing strategy for your retirement could be an excellent topic for you.
These are such great tips.
We're so clever.
Oh, we're so clever. You're so clever. And I think, if you've got a business that's relevant to any of those examples Suzi just gave you, just lift those ideas and put them into your quiz. They were great. Also, a couple of things as you're just pondering, what will my quiz be about? Maybe there's a myth that you can bust, like maybe it's with the skincare thing, right? Maybe there's some myth around, cleansing that you can bust and say, actually, there's really 4 approaches to cleansing and it's got to be dependent on your skin type. Find out which of the 4 skin type cleansing methods are right for you. So, maybe the myth is that all skin types can use any cleanser or something like that. Also, you want to think about what's going on in the media right now. There might be some really hot topics in your industry right now where you can just ride on the coattails of those media stories. Also, when you're talking to people just in your day-to-day sales and marketing, what are people saying wow about? You might have a concept or an idea that when you share it with them, they go, wow, that is amazing. I didn't realize that. Have a think back over what gets people excited when you do a webinar and the comments go off in the chat, or what is something you might post about in your socials that always gets guaranteed responses from people. That may be a clue as to where your topic is, the thing that's going to be really interesting to people. The other tip is it's important that the topic, the way you explain the topic, is in their language. So what do we mean by that? We can get very jargonistic when we're an expert, so try and avoid jargon, anything that's too obscure or clever. Whenever we try and be too clever with our marketing, it often leads to it just being confusing. Also, what is the conversation going on in your ideal customer's head? So I once did a quiz with Ryan Levesque. We worked on this quiz together for his Choose book. Actually, we're promoting the Choose book. And Choose was all about how to sort of choose your market. But the quiz we went out with was, what type of business should you start? Because that is the conversation that was going on in Ryan's ideal customer's head. Now, once they took the quiz, we were able to say, hey, this is the ideal type of business you should start. But here's the thing, it's not what, but who. Who should you be serving? How do you know if this business is targeting the right market? Well, that's exactly what's covered in the book Choose. Go ahead and buy my book Choose. So you see how it was kind of a really natural lead in. We knew we began with the idea we wanted to sell the book. We came up with a topic that was going to attract the right people. It was people that were looking to start a business. We knew we needed those people. They were the ones that were going to be interested in the book. But they didn't yet have the sophistication to think about their ideal client as much as they were already thinking the sentence in their brain, what type of business should I start? So we just made life easier for ourselves and went out with a quiz that answered the thing that was in their mind. And then gradually, as they came through the quiz and we had more opportunity to talk to them, we were able to say it's not actually what type of business, but who are you serving? So that's the other thing. And also being specific. So I just gave you an example there. We were looking for small business owners or people just starting a business. So we really came up with a very specific topic. And just recently in our mastermind group, we've got a number of our masterminders doing quizzes. And Chandra Moran from the Transit Lounge, who helps women with a service-based side hustle, she was thinking about a topic for her quiz being, what's your business growth style? Now, that's pretty good. However, business growth is a really broad concept. Like any kind of business owner might be attracted to that. But Chandra's really looking for people, specifically women, who have a side business, and not just any side business, but a side business where they're providing services like, say, HR or communications or marketing or branding. And so what we kind of counseled her on was maybe she should come up with a quiz topic that was more like this. What's the best way to get sales for your side business? Or what's the best way to get sales for your service-based side business? That's likely a question that they're asking themselves. How am I going to get more sales? So there's some of our top tips on choosing a topic. Now it's time to think about the fourth big step in the process, and that is, what are the categories that you're going to put people into once they've taken your quiz? And sometimes these are the buckets, if you want to think of it that way, or the results that people are going to get. So how might you categorize the topic of your quiz? So Suzi gave you some great examples earlier of the networking personalities. There were 3 distinct networking personalities that Suzi noticed inside her community. And so that was a really great way to categorize people or to bucket people once they completed her quiz. So for example, in a skin type quiz example, you might already know there are 5 main skin types: normal, oily, dry, combination, sensitive. And you might know the best skincare option for each. So for example, the dry skin type might need what you call the hydration boost regime. So that could be the name of the category that you would put a person into who had, say, a dry sort of skin type. You're in need of a hydration boost, right? So have a think about what are the types of categories that you can organize people into once they've taken your quiz, once they've answered your questions. And you want to have between 3 to 5 categories, no less and no more. And this is a tricky place. People sometimes want to have 20 categories here, and trust me, that isn't serving you or the people taking your quiz.
Yeah, that's a really, really great point. And I'll come back to this, just in what I'm about to say, is that you really want to sort of stick to this methodology. This is proven methodology that has created millions of leads for people. So you want to kind of try it out in this way. And so, as Michelle said, 3 to 5 buckets. So how do you decide those categories? Maybe you have some existing categories, like the skincare example that Michelle mentioned, or maybe you have a framework or a model. So for example, with our networking personality quiz, we had a scale that had 3 points on it. So isolation was at one end. This is the networker who doesn't really network. They're kind of trying to figure it out on their own. Another point on our scale was transaction, and this was the networker who was always trying to do a deal but didn't build relationships. And the third point at the center of our scale was what we call connected. This was the category that best described the typical woman inside the Her Business Network that is there to build relationships and do business with women long term. And so we use those 3 categories in our quiz as the 3 categories that you got bucketed into, categorized into at the end of the quiz. We knew that people might be somewhere along that scale, but likely leaning towards one of those categories. The other tip for categorizing your leads is if you have a journey or milestones. So for instance, if you had a business owner audience, maybe one of your categories could be startups. Another one could be people who are scaling the business. Another one could be people who are exiting the business, right? So you want to look at your business and think about those scales. So on this journey or milestones, if we go back to the example of the crocheter, example that Michelle gave earlier, there could be the person who's never done crochet, the person who knows how to do a square, like a granny square, the person who's a little more advanced. And so you're bringing people in, and then you can go, oh, okay, if that is you, then I'm going to point you to this particular product or service, or I'm going to speak to you in a particular way because, going back to the other example, you're a startup, therefore this is what's important from your business and this is how we can help you. If you are exiting, then you need something totally different. So really important to know where people fit in these categories. And as Michelle said, you want to limit it to 3 to 5 categories. It makes it simpler for them and makes it simpler for you.
Right, especially if you are then going to kind of customize the email that you send to people and customize some of the follow-up. You don't want to be having to do, 20 different types of customization. And there really is a kind of a law of diminishing returns that happens. If you can pick around 3 to 5 categories that represent around 80% of your market, then that's really all you need to do. Much more than that, and you're just overcooking the soup, if you like. So it is great when you're thinking about the categories to think about what sort of categories or buckets do people want to be a part of. So sometimes, you might have a category that sort of feels a bit negative, and you've just got to be careful about those categories. Either A, find a different model so people don't get categorized into something that feels like a criticism, or try and reframe that category so the sort of sting goes out of the tail of it a little bit. Like I remember there was a quiz example I saw once, and it was how ready are you, like how digital ready is your business? And one of the categories they'd chosen was you're a laggard. Like you're slow to
wants to
come
be
to the
called
market.
a laggard, even if you know you're a laggard.
That's right. You don't have to throw it in my face. So, I would love to see, if you were sort of thinking something like that, I'd love to see you kind of reframing that a bit more so that it felt a little more compassionate, a little bit less like a criticism. And then so it might be, you're in a catch-up phase, for example. You're in the catch-up phase. That means maybe you haven't kind of been an early adopter. You're not in the main swing. Maybe you're finding yourself a little bit on the back foot and you need to catch up. See, just a simple sort of shift in wording. I wouldn't mind being in that category. I might realize, hey, I think I've missed the boat a bit on this. I realize I've got some catching up to do, versus being called a laggard. So have a think about what are the buckets people want to be a part of. Also, the last thing anybody wants to do, even though these aren't scientific diagnostics, you do want to provide some level of self-discovery for the person taking your quiz. They have to kind of get to the end and go, oh, that was really, yes, that's interesting. I get that. That's given me some insight, right? So avoid being too obvious. Like I'm of a certain age now where I know my skin type. So if you kind of got to the end and just said, yes, you've got combination skin, Michelle, I'd be like, well, duh, I knew that at the start, but you might be able to tell me this really interesting skin approach to my skincare that I didn't know about before. So instead of just categorizing me into the skin type, maybe categorizing me into the skin routine that's right for my skin. So that example I gave before, instead of just saying, oh, you've got dry skin, you might put me into a category called the hydration booster category, which means I need a hydration boost for my dry skin. And here's what the hydration booster looks like. You're giving me some insights, some intel, some self-discovery. Now, the easiest, and you might have seen us talking about this the most, is to just think about putting people into a category of type. What type of people are they? What type of problem? What type of solution? That's one of the easiest ways to think about categorizing people. So we've kind of been giving you some very specific steps along the way. Think about what it is that you're offering at the end of the quiz. Think about who it is that you're serving. Think about your topic. Think about how you're going to categorize people. Now we want to talk about the 5th big step in the process, which is your quiz questions. What are you going to ask people to be able to tell which of these categories they belong to? Now you can probably see why it's important to do those categories or create those buckets first, because it's kind of impossible to write your quiz questions until you know the categories you're putting people into. Once you know those categories, writing those quiz questions with those buckets in mind actually becomes a whole lot easier. What do you need to ask people to know which category they will go into? So your job here, as you're thinking about the types of questions, is to diagnose people, understand a bit about them so you can really see which of the categories they belong to, so you can then prescribe something that's the next step. Now, even if every single person is going to be prescribed the same next step, like for everybody that went through Suzi's quiz, she was offering her business network membership because she knew it could help any of those women. But what she was able to do was tailor the message for each of those categories so that her business network felt like the natural next step. So we're asking these questions so we can diagnose where someone's at, put them into one of the categories or buckets, and then prescribe. Now, getting back to Ryan and his great framework, Ryan Levesque, he recommends 5 to 12 questions. No more and no less. Don't make it a 50-question quiz because that's going to have people kind of get bored and leave your quiz. And don't make it a 2-question quiz because it's really hard to feel like you were diagnosed when somebody just asks you 2 questions. If you go to the doctor and you walk in and you say, oh, I've got this funny pain in my tummy, and they say, oh, where is it? And you say, oh, just here in the middle. And they go, well, here's my diagnosis. You'd think, well, hang on a minute. Don't we need to ask a few more questions? So that balance is that 5 to 12 questions.
And I really want you to hear that number of questions because this is not an in-depth survey. We're not talking about doing an in-depth survey. We're actually talking about a marketing quiz. And Ryan Levesque, who we mentioned a couple of times already, he has worked with people to do quizzes across hundreds, if not thousands of industries many, many times. So when you find an expert, when you find a mentor who's doing this, my recommendation and what I do all the time is like, just do as they say, right? Don't try and mess with the system. And so when we followed Ryan's framework, we had a really easy first question, which just made it a no-brainer for people to get started. And that's the main thing. You want people to just start the quiz, right? Then they become invested. And you want it to be really easy because once someone answers that first question, they're going to be far more likely to answer the second question and the third question, etc. The biggest bounce rate, and the bounce rate is the number of people who bounce right out of your quiz, happens right on that first question. So you don't want to be bamboozling people. So we had a very simple first question, which was, which of the following best describes you? And we had 2 options. I have an existing business or I'm starting a new business. So super simple. I don't have to think too hard to come up with that answer. I know which one relates to me right now. The question divides the audience into 2, really super simple. And then we had 8 more questions. And they were things like, remember, this is a networking quiz. So one question might be when I have a new product or service to promote, and then we gave them 3 or 4 options under that. We asked another one, which was when it comes to getting referrals, and then we had 3 options under that. One was, people refer me in my business without me asking. The second was, I have people who refer me if I refer them. And the third was, I typically don't ask for or get referrals. So as you can see, there's no obscurity in the options that people get to choose. It's multiple choice. So I'm not asking them to do any hard work. They're just clicking a button. And so we just had those 3 options. Another question was, again, remember, we've already decided how we're going to bucket people. This question was about promotion. And what we asked was, when I have a new product or service to promote, do you, 1, advertise to find clients for your product and service? 2, you have an existing network, an email list or a market to promote your offer to? Or 3, do you get stuck because you don't have anyone to help you spread the word? So again, everyone we figured would fit into these categories that we had already predetermined.
And Suzi, you did something really great in that quiz. Even on that last question, you were giving us an example where you gave the answer options and you put like a key word relating to each answer option at the front in capitals. So for example, the first answer option was, I advertise to find clients for my product or service. In response to the question, when I have a new product or service to promote, I advertise to find clients for my product or service. But what Suzi did was she put the word advertise in caps at the front of that sentence. And then she put the word existing market in front of the next answer option and stuck in front of the next answer option. So it was just really easy for people to see at a glance, without even having to read the full sentence, when I have a new product or service to promote, I advertise, go to my existing market, or I'm stuck, right? And then they can read on. And you want to just think about how can I make this as easy as possible? And Suzi, I think that your quiz is so great. It's a great example of everything we're talking about today. Maybe we should be giving them a link to see it.
Yeah, why don't we put a link in our show notes and you can go through the quiz. As I said, it's like 8 or 9 questions in total. You will get, categorized into one of the 3 categories. But you'll get to see the exact way that the questions were formed, how we were categorizing people, and you'll get into a category. So you'll see the whole process, because as we said, it's not just coming up with a topic, knowing who it's for, doing the questions, and we've got some other tips for you. It's really seeing how does this become a lead generation activity that actually has a specific conversion activity associated with it. Now, you might be a member of her business already. You might be interested in her business. And so this will show you what it is that we do. But even if you're not interested, if it's not the right thing for you right now, it'll show you that whole quiz process from doing the quiz to getting the results to getting the follow-up email. And that might be really helpful for you.
Yeah, because, we're chatting away about it now, but I always love to see real life examples. So that's awesome. We'll definitely make sure that goes in the show notes for you today as you're listening. And the big thing with these questions is you do want to give specific answer options because you want people to just be able to tick a box, right? You don't want to have them to actually have to fill in answers. It's not a survey. And you want to think of it as a conversation. What might be the sorts of questions, that you would have with a person in real life if you were talking to them one-to-one to help them find out what type of networking personality they have? That makes it a whole lot easier for you to think about your quiz questions because that's all it is. It's a conversation that's just happens to be happening, in a digital format. So think of it as a conversation. Think about how you're going to give the answer options in a way that is going to help you figure out which bucket somebody belongs to. So the very easiest way to do this, let's say you've got 8 questions like Suzi had in her quiz. Only one of those actually needs to be the question that a person tells you which bucket they belong to. Now, I'll say that again in a different way so this makes sense. Let's say I've asked a question in my quiz and I've got 4 answer options because I know in my quiz I've got 4 buckets. And let's just say it's answer option A, B, C, and D. Now, based on how a person answers that, I'm going to, if they answer A, I'm going to put them into, bucket banana. If they answer bucket B, I'm going to put them into bucket carrot. If they answer, I wish I'd have done this alphabetically. Let me go again. If they answer A, I'm going to put them into bucket apple. If they answer B, I'm going to put them into bucket banana. If they answer C, I'm going to put them into bucket carrot. And if they answer D, I'm going to put them into bucket. What the heck's a D?
You should have thought of that.
I'm going to put them into bucket dog. So now they don't know that. They've answered all the questions, but only one of those questions really actually determined which bucket I belong to. That is the absolutely easiest way to do it. Remember, this is not a scientific diagnostic. So just think carefully about how you might frame questions so that a person would arrive at the end of the process feeling like, hey, they really listened to me and saw what I had to say, and therefore this bucket that I've been put into makes sense. Now, you can have more than one question determine which bucket somebody goes into, and depending on what software you're using and how much kind of capability it has, you can do all kinds of things getting clever about how the answers put somebody into a bucket. But the very simplest way, and I have seen hugely successful quizzes, like multi-million-dollar quizzes, where only one of the questions actually was the question that segmented people into a bucket. So don't make this harder for yourself than it needs to be. And I mean, this is the rule for all things, right, Suzi?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're hearing us like few questions, few buckets, keeping it simple. Because again, this is not a forensic exercise. This is a marketing quiz. Now, once you've got your questions, and I love all those tips that Michelle just gave you, there is one final super important question, which is where you capture their information. So this is typically, and certainly what we recommend, the last question you ask before you reveal the results. And typically you want to frame this as asking, where do you send their detailed reports with their results? So the fact that you have to have somewhere to send the report and their results is a great reason for needing the email address and the contact details. So then they put their information in, and you want to, again, keep it very simple. And you'll see this in our quiz. It's like first name, email, optional phone number in case you want to follow up with them. Then you send people to a page where you let them know that the report is on its way, but it doesn't end there. You want to move people straight away. So I know what people will be tempted to do is give them the report right there on the page. But remember, we have put people into a sales process here. So you want to send them to a page where you let them know the report is on its way, but you don't finish there. You move them forward. So you offer the next step. So for our quiz, that offer was to join the Her Business Network waitlist or to join the free Her Business Community Facebook. Right, depending what time of year it was, what promotions we had on, the outcome page might be slightly different, whether we were taking new members to the network or we weren't. And so how we did that was that on the page that they saw when they filled out their quiz, there was a video that let them know in the headline their results. It let them know which category they were in. And it let them know that we were sending their report and they could expect it in just a few minutes in their inbox. But in the meantime, that we wanted to give them access to something that kept them moving forward with us. And at that point in the video and right there on the page, we explained how we could continue to support them to network with the right people, to create profitable networks, to have the right connections that help them grow by joining us inside the Her Business Network. So you don't want to wait for them to go get the results and then try and move them forward later in your email. You kind of missed that opportunity where you had their attention. So you want to strike while the iron is hot, as the saying goes.
Yeah, and you really want to think about how you will pivot from the results that you're giving, which networking personality are you, because to the thing you're offering, because those results, as you're thinking about those, which categories you're going to put people into, they really only represent part of the story. How are you shifting from part of the story to the full story? So, for example, I've got a friend who has a business. She does coaching and courses and all kinds of, she's got books and things for parents of kids that just do not fit in the box. And so sometimes they've got behavioral issues. They've been diagnosed with, one condition or another. And so she has a quiz that helps sort of define some of the children's behaviors into categories. Now, really, regardless, like once you know that definition, that's only part of the story, isn't it? The full story is, now what do I do with that information? How do I now take this knowledge and turn it into something that's going to help me be a better parent of my child? Or how do I take the knowledge that I need, the hydration booster skin regime, to actually do something different with my skin and get better results with my skincare? Or how do I take the notion that I'm a bit more on the isolation side of the scale when it comes to my networking personality, and become more connected with my networking and get more sales through networking and be more powerful as a connected business owner? I need to join the Her Business Network. So what is the full story that I've only got a part of by getting the results? And that becomes the way you map them to the next step, map them to that moving forward towards the offer that you want them to take. And often a good strategy is to say, regardless of whichever category, everyone needs X, or you can add some points about why that specific bucket needs X. So just think about, how are you going to transition from, okay, you've got the results, the story doesn't end there. Now I want to open up the conversation around what you can do next now that you know that. And how well you do that will determine how many people will take the next step with you. You want it to really feel like a hand-in-glove match. So the really successful quizzes take people through that question process delivers the results, gives them some great insight, and then has a really powerful way to get them moving forward. And I totally 100% agree with what you said, Suzi, which is you want to do it right there and then on the page where you give them the results. Don't wait till you've sent them 10 more emails going deep into their results. The results are just a springboard into the thing you want them to do next. Now, that's step 5. We're going to give you step 6 and 7 in really quick order here because they're pretty straightforward. Step 6 is you send them the report, which has their results in it. So you've said, hey, tell me your email address so I can send you the report. You want to fulfill on that, but do not over-engineer that. You do just want to create a very simple explanation. It can just be a 2 or 3 page report, and it can be more or less taking what you've just said in the video or in the text on the page that they've just arrived on and putting it into a report type of format. Do not over-engineer this. And in that report, you want to include a link to the next step that you want them to take there as well. Because some people will take the next step right then and there on the page where they've completed the quiz. Others might need a little bit more time. They might want to go and read the report. So you want to keep offering the next step to those people. And that leads us to step 7, which is your follow-up email sequence. They've given you their email address. You've sent them the report. Don't let it end there. If they haven't immediately gone on to the next step, now you want to have a customized email sequence letting that person know, hey, that next step's still available, or, giving them a series of emails that have them feel like they know you and they like you and they trust you. And yeah, I do actually want to join the Her Business Network, or I do want to go to that free training, or I do want to take up that free call or buy that book. So do send a follow-up email sequence, and you can customize it for each of the buckets if you want. Again, don't go overboard with this. You might just in the first or second email have a little statement right at the start. Hey, because I know you really need that hydration booster regime, I've given you 3 tips here for hydration boosting. Now, regardless of that, everybody with every skin type needs to have blah, 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 blah. That's exactly what I'm sharing in my upcoming, healthy skin workshop. Click here to join.
So good. Thank you, Michelle. We just want to remember that the purpose of the quiz is to generate leads and get sales for you. And that is why Michelle's saying, don't over-engineer it. Don't wait to, send them 10 emails before you ask them for the sale. You want to use that opportunity right when they've done the quiz. You want to send them the report, and in that you want to promote the next step, and then you want to have that follow-up sequence. And just keep the main thing, as Stephen Covey says. The main thing is to turn it into sales. So on the tech side of things, because you might have questions, there are a range of tools that you can use to create a quiz. And we're going to put a link to some of those tools in today's show notes, which I'll tell you about in just a few minutes. We're also going to include links to some real life quizzes. Like Michelle, I love seeing a quiz in action and following through the process, looking at how it is that they're doing it. And of course, we'll give you the link to our quiz in the show notes as well. And so you might want to check that out. Also, I want to say, if you ever get the opportunity to study quizzes with Ryan Levesque, I highly recommend that you do that too. He does his quiz boot camp every now and then, not as often as he used to, but he really is the master. So we'll put a link to anything that might be relevant to that as well. So that's all in today's show notes. So stay tuned for that special link. But first, we have prepared a special download for you to go with this episode. Michelle, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So we have actually put together these 7 steps that we've been talking about into a nice checklist for you with a few of the key tips that we've shared today, so that you've got a really handy download from today's session. And you can more or less like print it out or put it on your screen and just kind of work off that. Okay, step 1, I've got to think about what is it that I'm offering, right? And I love a checklist, because you can listen to an episode like today and go, yep, great. And then when you're on your own sitting at your desk, go, oh, what was I supposed to do first? what comes next, right? It can be a bit jumbled in our heads. So we're just going to give you this process, the steps that we've outlined today, in a nice, easy to use checklist with a couple of the key tips.
Thank you. And I'll give you the details of where you can download that in just a moment. You definitely want to grab that, and use it alongside your quiz creation. The other thing I want to say is if you're a member of the Her Business Network and you are creating a quiz, you do want to share that inside of our members group so that you can get some support and feedback. And if you've got a quiz and you haven't quite launched it and these tips are helpful, then be sure to go ahead and implement here what you're learning here before you roll it out. So we love sharing tips like those in this episode with as many business owners as possible. So I'm going to ask you a favor right now from me and Michelle, and that is to leave us a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts. We have over 100 5-star reviews. So thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed this episode or any episode of the show, we would love it if you would leave us a rating or review. Now, one of the things that we love to do when we get a review is to give that person a shout out because we're all about supporting women business owners. And so today we want to give a shout out to Siona Roberts from the Hooked on Crochet Club. Now, she helps women crocheters improve their crochet skills with her online membership, which is called the Hooked on Crochet Club. We were using her as an example earlier in this episode. And she was referring to one of our previous episodes, which was on overcoming perfectionism. And she said, I love this Content Sells episode on overcoming perfectionism. As someone who's spent more than 2 decades in quality, so she's in quality and assurance, she said, I have said for years that if you think something is perfect, then you've given up. Everything can be improved upon, so you may as well just put it out there as it is because there will always be something you can do to make it better, and you can do that later. It's one reason why I also love crochet so much. It's so much easier to hide and amend the mistakes than any other craft. So thank you, Siona, for that review. Siona's also happens to be a member of our Marketing Success Mastermind program, and do check her out if you are a beginner crocheter. Is that a word, crocheter? Then you definitely want to check her out. We'll put a link to her details in our show notes, which you will find along with a download that we've prepared with a checklist. You'll find that at herbusiness.com/make a quiz. herbusiness.com/make a quiz. That is today's episode, but we have got an amazing next episode coming up with one of my favorite people on the planet. Do you want to tell us, Michelle, what that's about?
We are going to be talking about how and when to hire a copywriter. Now, if copywriting is the bane of your existence, you put off writing those emails, you put off writing your quiz, you put off, updating your sales page, whatever it is, then you definitely want to tune into this episode. Or maybe you are pretty good at copywriting, but you're overworked and you're like, how do I give this to somebody else that still understands my voice? What do I pay a copywriter? And maybe you've started to realize there are different types of copywriters. We are going to be talking about all of that and more. And again, with somebody who's Suzi's favorite person, who's one of my favorite people, and that is the amazing Belinda Weaver of Copyright Matters. And she is a copywriter herself with many years experience, and she's a copywriter coach. So she is absolutely the one to talk to on this topic. So that's how and when to hire a copywriter with Belinda Weaver in our next episode.
So that's coming up in the next episode of the Content Sells podcast. If you don't already subscribe, you want to hit that subscribe button wherever you are right now so that you get that episode right when it's released. Michelle, anything you want to say before we go today?
I really like the show notes link for today's show, Suzi, herbusiness.com/make a quiz. And I'm going to say, go ahead, make a quiz.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time right here on the Content Sells podcast. Bye for now.